Welcome back. Our next delightful guest is Susan Gold. Susan's topic today is the secret key to freedom, finding forgiveness after abuse and trauma. Susan Gold is an author and transformationalist. That was a mouthful. She speaks the language of the heart and listens between our words to help us move through our life challenges with grace. She's here today to share wisdom and love. And before she starts, I want to share what her book cover looks like. Uh, Toxic Family. Okay, so I would turn off my background, but my office is messy behind me. It's very embarrassing. So please share with everybody the name of your book, Susan.
Sure, I'm so happy to. Thanks, Karen and Laura. Awesome. That was so fantastic. And thank you, Pam and Charlene, for sharing your exercise. The name of my book, sit down, Toxic Family, Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. And it actually wasn't my title. My title was Magical Illumination, Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. So when my publisher called and said, hey, we're going to change this title to Toxic Family, I was like, oh man, here we go. Jerry Springer and all, because I have tremendous love for my family and my family system. And that's what I'm really here to talk about, finding forgiveness after trauma, after abuse. It's kind of tricky. And it's certainly not what I was trained in growing up. That patriarchal system of tit for tat and let me get up and over. And you need to see it my way. And the rage over injustice. So I almost got nervous when Karen said, the title of the conversation I'm having today, because some people look at me as if I've had two heads. Why would I want to forgive someone who trespassed so deeply? And it really is the key to living well, to abundance, to joy. As a matter of fact, in Laura's first exercise, I got to write down the words. I feel excited, privileged, free, happy, part of, clear, honest, joyful, willing, open, appreciative, abundant, alive, enthusiastic, and hope-filled. And those words should not fit. I think the first memory of abuse and trauma was at 18 months for me. I was left unattended for quite a while and cried and screamed and felt the tears coming down my face. And when I finally was recognized, it wasn't with love. My parents absolutely were doing the best they could. My father had an issue with alcohol, with womanizing, and Peter Pan syndrome. And my mother self-soothed with food and was on diet pills, which were straight speed. And I believe she also was struggling with a mental illness. And though she was loving and kind, she could switch on a dime, and I'd be beaten almost to the point of passing out and blacking out. So that's the system that I came from: chaotic, unknowing, unsure, unsafe. And I wanted to just escape, which I did. And in my 20s, those same symptoms that I saw demonstrated in my family system, lying when it was just as easy to tell the truth, anger and rage and horrible fights between two people that were to be loving, meaning my parents, drinking and eating to soothe and find escape. I was doing the same things, recognized it, and got help. And that's when my life started to shift. And it's been a trajectory. It's been an exceptional walk through fire of soul evolution, because that's how I choose to see it. I faced sexual abuse in the workplace. I faced addiction, recovering from my own alcoholism. I faced clinical depression, which was a 10-year odyssey. And ultimately, narcissistic abuse. And that was the perfect storm that woke me up to really face what I was creating in my own life. I'm one of those, maybe I was in Southern California for too long and the hooey juice got to me, but I firmly believe I came here with a plan, that the players in my movie have been cast perfectly, and that this is a huge opportunity for me to learn and grow. And the secret weapon of finding forgiveness has been essential. I think the first wake-up call was when Marianne Williamson, who's a spiritual teacher, back then she was teaching Course in Miracles, and I think now she's a bit of a political figure as she's gone on, but she would give lectures on the Upper West Side in a little small church, and she would bunk with my friend Tara at her apartment. And at the lecture one night, she told us about coming in from the airport. She'd fly in from LA to New York City. And she got a cab driver that was so abusive and so angry and so frightening. And when she finally came to her destination, she tipped him double. She said his anger was a call for love, and that we could heed the same call. And that was huge insight that year, that my challenges could be calling out for love. My father grew up with a father who was Peter Pan, who didn't really want children. He wanted to be the child. My father could never measure up. And he was pushed far away from the subjects he loved, history and music, to become a genius astrophysicist, but at what cost? My mother came from horrible abuse. Her father had been beaten almost to the point of death by his stepmother, and he perpetrated that same abuse on my mother. And her mother was not allowed to comfort her. My grandfather thought that would be the better way to go. And my mother didn't understand where these beatings were coming from and why. She was to pretend everything was okay, and it wasn't. So those two understandings gave me so much compassion in the family lineage. It was a toxic family ancestry. It was hurt and damaged children, raising hurt and damaged children. And then I was an adult acting out the same behavior. And it took great courage to address it, which I have with various modalities over decades. And finally, what I came to understand was I could choose to learn from these circumstances. I could choose to find compassion. First, I dug into that rage. I let myself express it. I said no more. I created strong boundaries. And once I did that, I could look deep into the other person's soul and see their heart bleeding. And that's what gave me compassion. And that's what gave me the freedom to actually find forgiveness. And that's why I'm living now in a place where I feel joy. I feel free. I feel excited. It wasn't the understanding I came in with. I didn't want to look under the boulder and see the opportunity. I wanted to roll that boulder right into that boss that chased me around the office and grabbed my crotch. But you know what? Because I left that circumstance and stood up, I created a glorious career with great opportunity. Stepping up and out of the abuse has created abundance, magic, and a very fulfilling lifetime thus far. And I'm so privileged now to share that with others, the message of hope, because forgiveness is truly freeing. Everyone asks me that reads the book, that gets to know the specifics, how in the heck could you forgive those actions? I had a role to play. I had an experience that my soul desired to evolve. And I think next time I come in, I might check that small print a little more closely, but I wouldn't trade it for the world now. And I'm so grateful for the compassion I feel in my heart and my ability to hear you speak, not from my head, from my heart, and listen between your words and feel what you're truly desirous of. So I just want to thank everyone and really encourage you to open your heart and to try to explore forgiveness. You'll find incredible freedom and you'll live in a brand new zip code. I promise. Thanks, Pam. I see you clapping.
Susan, that was so beautiful. And what's so special about you, you didn't name drop that whole time. And Susan has worked with some pretty cool people. Can you do a little bit of name dropping so we can see you as even more cool?
Well, after I was abused in the workplace and left to form my own agency, I knocked on the door of the factory to convince Andy Warhol to do a commercial he didn't want to do. And that set me up to match celebrities with brands. And that led me into producing for television. And I was very, very fortunate to work in New York and LA on very high profile projects and with very high profile people. Taylor Swift, Jack Black, David Beckham, just so many people. I remember pulling out George Clooney's stuff from the trailer so we could get Vince Vaughn's stuff in there, walking Steven Spielberg around a set for a day to stall for time. And who was I, this little girl growing up in this crazy little tiny town? Um, but it was really wonderful to have that experience, and I'm so grateful for it. But I know I'm living my point and my purpose, talking about the very taboo subject of toxicity in our family line and how that affects us, and to clear it from a place of love.
Beautiful. Yeah, the only reason I think the name dropping is healthy here is I want survivors to see that anything is possible. Anything. Because one of the things that happens when we're suffering, we can get in the mindset that my dreams aren't important, that I don't matter. And so when we have women like yourself defying the odds and creating abundance, so however that looks, it doesn't have to be, being in Hollywood or being in New York. It can look very different. So thank you for sharing that. And are you willing to take some questions from the audience?
I'd be so willing. Yeah. Shoot them at
Awesome.
me.
Awesome. Does anybody have a question for Susan about her book, about her childhood, about her career?
I have a quick one for you, Susan.
Sure.
In my case, as I move into forgiveness of my daughter's abuser, I feel like I'm betraying her by doing that. And it's like the world doesn't accept forgiveness. They just want you to say bad things about that person. And I believe that if we heal everybody, not just survivors. So the forgiveness is for everybody, the healing is for everybody. And I wonder what I keep to myself about it is my answer so far, because I don't want her to necessarily feel like she's being betrayed by me who has forgiven. Any comments?
Yeah, I just want to say, Laura, I profoundly relate to that. I love my family members, and to publish a book called Toxic Family and feeling like I threw them under the bus was really difficult. And I have so much love and respect for the roles that they played. So to really be frank about what happened was so traumatic for me. And what I'm learning is it's just taking time. And you may be giving your daughter a huge gift when you're ready and you feel it's right to express the forgiveness. You may open a whole nother door for her and others, as you said, by being brave and stepping up and sharing that, because I feel that is the complete circle. And that is the way to truly live authentically. It's not the easier, softer way. It's not the standard society protocol. I mean, I divorced a narcissist. It was really tough, but I see him and I call him when I'm speaking on podcasts or in interviews, my greatest guru, as in teacher, because he was. And when you read the story, you see the injustice outright, but I don't have an attachment to it anymore. And that's real freedom. So, blessings to you and to your daughter, Laura. You're doing so beautifully. And I just love what you're offering the world. And I'm looking forward to hearing about the miracles that happen as you continue to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for the question, and thank you, Susan, for the answer. I suspect if anyone's like me listening, these two women are slightly more evolved. Even myself, after 25 years of doing trauma recovery therapy, forgiveness is a tough one. And so I tell my clients at the beginning, it's optional. I'll work with you if you're not ready to forgive. Maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't, but it's going to be your choice, giving them that power back. But one
Yeah,
day I hope it's both of you.
that's so true. And I'm the same. I get nervous when I have to talk about forgiveness, I totally understand. And yeah, it is a process to get there. So anyway, if anybody resonated with me and they want to have a conversation, just go to susangold.us and there's a one-to-one chat I'd love to have. I'd love to hear your story.
Do you have time for one more question, Susan? Because Charlene had her
Oh,
hand up.
oh yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Charlene.
All right. Well, it's also related to forgiveness because, I mean, I've learned that we're not actually forgiving and forgetting the person or the situation that you're having, but you're actually doing it for yourself. But I continuously have somebody who triggers me and just makes me so angry. And I just want to strangle him sometimes. And I keep telling myself, and my husband does too, you have to let it go. But I find it so hard to do it when he keeps coming back in my face every single time. How do you do that? How do you deal with that?
I so appreciate you bringing that up. And Charlene, I have those people in my life. I mean, we're human beings, having a human experience. But as you know, the more you engage, right, the more it slaps you back in your face. It's like eating the rat poison and wanting that person to die. And they just don't. You're the one that's holding the bag, right? So it's an evolution and it's practice. It's natural and normal to have judgment, to have resentment, to have rage, to have anger. But ultimately, in my heart, I know that forgiveness is the key to freedom. And there's nothing better as far as revenge goes than living well and being free. So sometimes I even use that as a
That's
motivator.
beautiful. I like that. Living well and being free. Because I think that's what triggers him a lot as well.
Yeah, he sounds like he's just a gnat calling out for attention. And
That's it.
yeah,
That's it.
gotta laugh at that, gotta give a little giggle and then send a lot of love. Because
Yeah.
boy, you wouldn't want to inhabit that body, would you?
No, and I wouldn't want to be married to him either. God help us. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Charlene.
Oh, Charlene, that was such a beautiful point. 'Cause another thing I work with my clients on is that you can respect someone and have compassion. Like maybe respect was not the exact word choice in this scenario, but having compassion for someone doesn't mean you have to be married to them. Yeah. It took me many years to learn that myself, but I'm there now. So, Susan, I want to read one of the comments in the chat that was written for you by Nadia. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Susan. I feel like I just listened to a soul sister. Generational trauma passed on through the generations. The abusive and violent experiences that ended up in the overwhelming storms in life, threatening relationship with a narcissist that had me chained for years. And so I loosened the grip of those experiences by my decision of forgiveness. How I finally set myself free. My detached way to tell the story now, like in the last book with Laura in 100 Poems, which got published at the very same time as my ex-husband passed. Thank you, Nadia, so much. And if someone from Brave Healing Productions, Brave Healers Production, if you want to drop that book of poems, I know Elizabeth is speaking at some point too. But anytime you want to drop that link, if you're involved in that project, um, I would love to see that in the chat. That would be awesome. Okay, does anybody else have any comments for Susan before we transition? I'm gonna stop the recording before I forget. You know how I am.